Number one, I would say, is typically just having all your financial accounts and numbers in order. Number two, I would say, is surrounding the freehold or leaseholds. Number three, I would say, is just get ahead of the curve with your due diligence. And number four, I'd say the big one is don't take the foot off the gas. And number five, sometimes we do see vendors give a little bonus to the staff before they depart, and we would normally advise against that. Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in to our water cooler on common mistakes to avoid when selling a practice. I'm Anil, one of the practice valuers here at Dental Elite, and today I've got joining me Carl, our Associate Director, part of the sales progression team. So, just to get things started, I think you and I come across this quite a lot. Number one, I would say, is typically just having all your financial accounts and numbers in order. Because, right from the starting point, for me to even do a valuation for you, I need to make sure I have the most recent 3 years of full financial accounts that are up to date and quite accurate, because normally we see cost lines that are not reflective of what we want to see, where maybe the accountant might jumble in, labs, materials together, maybe add certain costs and different cost lines. So I think it's really reviewing those accounts to make sure they're accurate so I can provide an accurate valuation. But I think from the buyer side, it's also quite imperative to have recent data.
I was going to say, from the buyer's perspective, when they're getting bank funding, the banks will instantly require the 3 years accounts as well. So it'd be imperative that you have them up to date for a nil, but also it's part of the buyer's funding process as well.
Yeah, fine, perfect. And then number two, I would say, is surrounding the freehold or leasehold. So if you own the freehold, I would always advise getting a RICS valuation done on the building, because we're not RICS surveyors where we can value the bricks and mortar. And time again, we bring practices to market, and normally the freehold is subject to an independent valuation from the bank side and from their independent panel. And sometimes we do end up with vendors quite disappointed with the end result when the valuation comes back.
And I was going to say, key to that is I think a lot of vendors get there via estate agent, whereas the reality is it doesn't give you that true commercial valuation that the RICS valuer will do on behalf of the bank. So what you're trying to do is alleviate any potential issues further down the line subject to that valuation. Exactly.
So it's always key to get an accurate freehold valuation so you know where you stand. And even if you've decided to hold on to the freehold, at least you know what your rental value is, and we can build that in within the valuation with you being the landlord after selling the business. When it comes to third-party landlords, this is quite the bugbearer for a lot of deals.
This often is, because basically the third-party landlord has no incentive to change what's already there on the agreed lease.
Yeah.
So what we would always recommend is that a vendor would then, once the deal's agreed, give their solicitor instruction or speak to the landlord, get the introduction made, the buyer solicitor then can be introduced, then they can get the negotiations moving.
Yeah.
Because the reality is most lenders now prefer a 15-year lease, which will be in the heads of terms, but you need to make sure that that's in place. So that early contact will make the process swift as it possibly can be.
Yeah, 100%. And I think following an offer being accepted and the heads of terms being agreed, number three, I would say, is just get ahead of the curve with your due diligence.
Yeah.
Because that could be quite a lengthy process. But if you've already got, say, software you're using where you've got data in order, and if you haven't got that, we can always provide certain frameworks to help.
And I was going to say that the reality is that Anil and the team can give you a sort of a draft due diligence questionnaire, which will give you an idea of what you need to collate, but then be aware that once the deal's agreed, then the solicitors, the buyer solicitor, will send over their own due diligence questionnaire, which has to be the definitive of what's worked to. But you will be ahead of the game if you start that preparation early, because the reality is these solicitors won't be able to really progress the legals until that is in place. So it is key for that to be moving as swiftly as we can.
Yeah. And then number four, I'd say the big one is don't take the foot off the gas. So when you are signing the heads of terms and you have agreed your deal, the key is to actually maintain the performance of the business, because we've based the value of the business on what you're turning over and what you're generating in profits. So I think the key there is making sure you are maintaining activity in terms of your UDAs, you're making sure you're hitting that private income also, because given the drop off, depending on how big it is, could potentially lead to renegotiations down the line and potentially the deal falling through because it's not the same practice that was originally agreed.
Yeah, and I think the simple way of putting that is just always run the practice as you always have done, right to the point of completion. By doing that, you're alleviating that temptation to think, right, I've got the deal agreed, let's take that off. Because the reality is, again, if you've got a lender involved, closer to the end completion, they will just ask for this, even if it's the last 3 months' figures, just to make sure that they can see that turnover is being maintained. So we're just trying to alleviate any potential discrepancies further down the process.
Number 5 of our final point, what I would say is sometimes we do see vendors give a little bonus to the staff and give an uplift on their hourly rates before they depart. We would normally advise against that, especially big uplifts, purely because it does eat into the profit. So if we're looking at it from a group sale perspective where you've achieved an EBITDA multiple of 7.5 times, if you've increased hourly rates where it decreases your profits by say 10k, that's a difference of 75k on your asking price, just through those subtle changes that make a big difference.
So again, if through the process, once it's agreed, if a vendor will approach me and ask me, I want to do this, I would always ask them to run again by Anil or the team and just make sure that they pass the correct, accurate figures so they can run the revaluation to make sure that it does or doesn't. They'll update you whether it does or doesn't affect your potential valuation. So just be careful in basically what you carry out.
Thank you for listening to us. Do get in touch with us. Feel free to contact us directly via email or telephone if you want to have a valuation carried out for yourselves at your practice, and equally if you want to discuss anything sales related.